welcome to the Nursing Dose with your host, Farah. Today we have a very special guest. We have Dr. Kimberly Madison, and we're going to talk about some entrepreneur stuff, nurses in business. So today we're going to talk about 5 tips of, or maybe like 5 tips of maybe you're an entrepreneur, but you don't know it. You could be an undercover entrepreneur type nurse. So that's what we'll get into today. So I'm so excited to have you today, Dr. Madison. Thank you for joining me. If you want
Thank
to,
you.
hello.
Hi. I have to, so this is interesting. We're talking about entrepreneurship, right?
Yeah.
Because I found out, well, first of all, I've seen you in these internet streets for years. And then I finally heard you talk and saw you live in person when you did the interview with Dr. Sandra Pagenta on her previous podcast, the Dr. Nurse podcast.
Mhm.
And Sandra is instrumental in even why you can even talk to me about entrepreneurship, because I used to listen to entrepreneurs all the time, but everyone's talking about other things outside of healthcare. So really, I thought, okay, if I'm going to do this thing, I have to go to healthcare.
Yeah.
It wasn't until so when I got my MP degree, I decided to continue at the bedside while I finished my doctorate, but I still wanted to have my foot in the community. So I joined the MP Association of DC. I became the student rep for their board, and then I joined DMPs of Color. So through DMPs of Color, I was part of the program committee, and the founder, CEO, and pioneer,
Yeah.
Dr. Danielle McCamey,
Yeah.
posted that she had been on the Dr. Nurse podcast. Never heard of it, watched her interview. Then I went through all the other episodes, came across one with Justin Allen, who's the founder of Elite NP. That showed me that I could stay in healthcare with my expertise and knowledge and be an entrepreneur. And here we are. So the full circle is here. Now I get to talk to you in person about these kind of assessment skills on how to identify whether or not you're actually an entrepreneur.
That is amazing. And it's funny that you say that you've been following me for a little bit in these nursing streets because honestly, I've been creating content for like, I would say almost 3 years, maybe more consistently, like 2.5. But sometimes I never think like people are watching.
Mhm.
Some people don't comment, so you don't really know. But it's amazing the power of social media and really being visible on LinkedIn. And I know you've started your journey with podcasting, which we'll get into in a little bit. So, and that, Dr. Danielle McKimmey, I'm also part of DMP of Colors. DMPs are everywhere.
You don't have to be a DMP to sit with me.
Yes, yes, because you can join that organization as well, even if you're not a DMP.
Or
But
nurse.
yeah, they're doing amazing things. So I wanted to kind of just get into, you know, a little bit about your journey. Let's start with the podcasting because I know Sandra too. She's amazing. I was on hers, as you mentioned. Great energy. I felt like we were honestly like, sisters, right? And this is how I felt too with your podcast. And I appreciate you having me on. It was so much fun. So talk to them about your podcast and kind of how you started it and why.
Yeah, so the podcast is called the Melanin Initiative, which you were kind enough to grace us with your expertise when it comes to sepsis, as well as participating in our new series, 73 Questions, right? Which is inspired by NDMD's YouTube channel, who is now an anesthesiology resident. So the reason I even did the podcast, I was kind of at the end of my career at the bedside. I was traveling, and I had this gentleman, Black male in his 60s, who had just been, he had just had a catheter placed for dialysis. And, throughout that, because I was a night nurse, throughout that night, I was talking to him about getting ready for the next day. And he expressed that this was one of his greatest fears in life. People are afraid of water. They're afraid of snakes. I never heard anyone say they were afraid of going on dialysis. But we do know that once you get diagnosed with certain diseases, we start saying, if you don't make these changes, this is what your future looks like. So I got how he got there, but I just never heard anyone say that out loud.
Right.
So as the night goes on, I realized that he had stopped his blood pressure medication because his insurance ran out. First, he cut them in half, and then he just ran out completely. And so I just wondered, had he known the relationship between high blood pressure and his fear,
Yeah.
maybe he would have made some other changes. And so I just asked him, like, what is high blood pressure? And he went on this philosophical tangent. And I was like, okay, let me rephrase it. I was like, what does high blood pressure do to your body? And he was a huge talker. But once I asked that question, he actually went silent. And he was like, you know what? I don't think I know the answer to that question. And at this point, I had been a nurse for 10 years, and it dawned on me too, like, where was he going to learn that? We don't learn it in school. Much like this, my whole journey with financial literacy, coming to this like epiphany, like, where were we going to learn this stuff, right? We don't learn it in school. We tell you don't trust Dr. Google. And in my 15, 20-minute visit with you, especially as if you're in primary care, I'm not talking to you about what these things are. I'm just telling you they can happen.
Right.
And so it just inspired me to throw my hat in the ring when it comes to health literacy, and of course, podcasting. And so that was the motivation behind the show. It's really our opportunity to kind of just educate the community, empower them, educate them, and give them the information and the language to advocate for themselves and others.
That is amazing. And I commend you for doing that because honestly, I believe that all nurses are educators, but um, I do have a strong passion for education. Obviously, I got my master's in education, and I'm very drawn to supporting new grads and nursing students. But we forget, right, a lot of times that we are lacking so much in patient education. Like I worked in the ER, and some of the education that was happening that I was seeing was like, what is going on? Like, you can't just hand them a stack of discharge papers and say, one or two lines and be like, all right, just follow up with your primary. Like, they're like looking at you like, what am I doing next type thing. And that's why there's such an issue with like readmissions and all these things. So anyways, I don't want to go down a rabbit hole, but definitely education is definitely key with prevention and screenings and that type of stuff. Because coming from Canada, the one thing I noticed in the US is that we need a better prevention and primary and secondary prevention and like screenings and all that. And that's a great story that got you to start this podcast to help the public. So let's get into entrepreneurship, shall we? And if you are watching, let us know where you're watching from, what city, what country. Don't be afraid to say hello. Drop a comment in the comment section. We'll be happy to get back to you, even if you're watching the replay. All right, so let's get into it. So what really gave you the spark and like to take that action?
I love this question, and I think it's actually a segue from what we were just talking about, literacy and how you think there should be more emphasis put into primary, secondary, and prevention. Because I think when it comes to that and education, nurses excel. That's what we do. Oftentimes the public wants to know what's the difference between nurses and doctors. We are experts when it comes to primary prevention and health promotion and disease prevention. Right. We do that in our sleep, right? So when it comes to entrepreneurship, sometimes we get to a certain age and level of experience, and it sounds like we're so confident. We just know everything's going to be so clear, right? I'm going to tell you this story, and it's going to sound like I knew exactly what I was doing the whole time. But this is just in retrospect. I'm able to put the words together to make it make sense, right? So I do have some people in my family who did entrepreneurship. My grandmother used to rent out rooms in her house, right? The original Airbnb. And I think she had like a little shop where she sold stuff. But when I was thinking about this interview with you, I was like, I actually don't know what she was selling. So I need to go back and ask my mom. But my grandparents, a kid's dream, they had a candy shop. Right? Like, come on, right? And I would spend the summers with them. Like, it doesn't get any, besides maybe horses or puppies.
Where was that? Like, where?
That's in Jersey.
In Jersey. Oh.
and then my mom's family's from New York. So
okay, cool.
But my first, and I don't know where the idea, and I didn't really know those stories necessarily like I know them now, right? But when I was a kid, my first business was called Kim's Cookies. And I was thinking, like, really, I was more than just the business owner because I was making my mom do the work. She would go to the grocery shop. She would get the ingredients. I would do the baking, but she would do the selling and I would take the money. So I don't know what you want to call that, but that was my first foray, right?
That's a business mindset right there.
And they were so supportive. I didn't have a business plan. I just knew I wanted to make the money. Okay. And then I just had this like idea, like I thought it was one day, I'm going to get married, but I love my last name and I want to hold it somehow. I was like, well, maybe I'll open a gym and I'll just call it Madison's. That was kind of this other idea that just was always floating in my head. Mm-hmm. So then, I don't know, maybe during grad school, I started listening to a podcast and it was all about like, how did I create this? And it's all the people, people from Starbucks to Orange Theory, all these big companies, but also some smaller companies that have been really successful. And it was just these entrepreneurs talking about how they built this. And it was strange to me, like at some point, all of them scaled their business or had to sell it. And I never, it was so many people who sold their business, even like Men's Warehouse. And I just was like, wow, why are they selling this thing that's become so big? And
Yeah.
it's like, that's the evolution of business, right? At some point, it has to either scale or you have to sell it, because its value becomes, it becomes more valuable to you than holding on to it at the same level. And so, yeah, I was just listening to a bunch of people, and especially during the pandemic, when they just made it seem so accessible. And
Yeah.
these are just regular people. Maybe they do or don't have a college education. Maybe they do or don't have a mentor or role models, but they just went out there and they had an idea and they went with it.
Right.
One guy I interviewed, because I used to do a professional mentorship thing for kids, and I would just hit up people, ask them to come on and talk to kids and expose them to jobs of the future. And it wasn't a thought, but it just happened that so many of them were entrepreneurs because they were easily accessible. I could find them on social media. They're talking about what they do, and they were eager to talk about it, especially for kids. So one guy, he started a cleaning company with $27. Shout out to Detroit. What up, though?
What up, though? I used to work in Detroit. That's so
Oh.
funny. So that I totally, it's funny because I don't know if you know Kirk, right? You know Kirk
Demetrius?
Demetrius Kirk.
Yeah.
Demetrius Kirk. So he's from Detroit, and we were talking once because we're trying to be on each other's shows, and he's like, "Oh, I'm from Detroit," and I was like, "Yeah, what up, though?" And then he just like instantly got it. So, anyways, I love it. Detroit has such a cool culture.
Yeah, but yeah, he started a cleaning company with $27. Now it's like millions of dollars, and he's not just in Detroit, he's also in Houston. So it's just these like people, regular people with an ordinary idea, not afraid to go out there and make some mistakes, but also make a successful story out of themselves.
Awesome. So let's get into it. So what are the 5, kind of tips or clues that we're going to give you guys that may give you the indication that maybe business is for you if you're a nurse? So number 1 is innovative problem solving. So we just talked about that, right? Like you said, it could be a cleaning company, it could be anything, as long as you just do it really well. So I follow Alex Hormozy and Layla Hormozy, and they're basically saying they're all millionaires, right? It doesn't have, you don't have to recreate an idea to have a business if you're really into it. But so you can be a nurse, you don't have to do something necessarily surrounding healthcare, but if you want to, that's great, because innovation in healthcare is great to advance our profession. But if you want to have a side hustle or start a business, you can. And obviously, right, problem solving for nurses, like we're the best at problem solving. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I love this idea because nurses are always finding workarounds. Okay. And the reason that is because so many ideas are brought into healthcare, but nurses aren't brought in to the end when it's time to put it into practice. And by then they haven't been consulted. So now nurses are trying to make it work for the real world. Now, if that was reverse engineered and we were brought in at the ideation phase and the design phase, there wouldn't be so many workarounds, right?
Yes.
We're forced to do extraordinary things with very minimal resources. And that alone is one of the primary characteristics that makes every nurse at least in the position to do it if they want to.
Yes, and I love that you talked about in the beginning phase. I remember as an adjunct faculty at NYU, for one of the professional development days we had in the summer, we had somebody come and talk about design thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And that's amazing. If you guys get a chance, definitely look up what design thinking is, because it's all about possibilities and thinking positively and not thinking like, oh, that's not going to work. That's not going to work. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely look into design thinking. It's just, it's awesome. So that's tip number 1, or clue number 1. Number 2 is passion for independence or freedom. That is a huge one.
Who doesn't know this better than nurses, especially after the pandemic, right? So if you were already working, you already so, I can only talk about hospital setting because that's most of my experience within the hospital.
Yeah.
So, and of course, I'm going to shout out night nurses as many times as I can. It's
night nurse.
A lot of autonomy. I know you get that in the ED, and I know they get that in the ICU, right?
Right.
You are learning. You're the show. And patients recognize that too, right? Before you become into the system, you don't know that. You think the doctor is king, right? But
No,
once
we're running it here. Who run the hospital?
one, and this is not a slight against doctors, right? It's
Right.
just once you get in, the time is different. If I have a handful of patients, I can spend a lot of time with you. You're going to see me. You're going to think my value is greater. The doctor has a 10 handfuls of patients. You're not going to see them as much just because the roles are different, but the care is the same. But yes, I love what you were saying about that, which and now I just forgot what we
The
were saying.
independence and
Oh,
the
yeah, right.
needs of
So you
freedom.
have the autonomy, right? And then the pandemic taught us the freedom part because travel nursing became so popular and
Yeah.
then you get to see all this freedom. People are posting about it on social media. So now you have a different perspective on what it means to be a nurse.
Yeah. And honestly, I think everybody, regardless of their industry that they're in, they're always looking for flexibility. Obviously, everybody's looking for, um, fulfillment. They want to be able to enjoy their lives. And I think it's very different in the United States compared to a lot of other countries. I feel like Canada, working in Canada, it's kind of similar. But I feel like you have more days off, you have more vacation days, there's more perks. Like maternity leave here, forget about it. I was like, I should have just had my kids in Canada
Mm.
because you get like 18 months of mat leave. And actually, like New York State just passed something about um, like prenatal leave or something. But, anyways, my point is that people need time off. Um, and I'm not saying entrepreneurship will
Mm.
give you that in the beginning because there's a lot of misconceptions. It is not easy. And full discretion and transparency. Like for me, I'm still working my way to that journey to full entrepreneurship because I highly commend people that just take that leap and go full right onto it. But I don't recommend it unless you're financially stable, meaning you have enough to at least sustain you, I would say, for like 6 months to maybe 9 months because you're it. Like you're generating your own income as a full entrepreneur. And that is
24/7 job.
and it takes a lot of courage. So back to my point, in the beginning, there's a lot more grind and hustle. And that's just the way it is until later on. Like, right, it's like you're planting a seed and later on you're gonna get those fruits. But it's like a never ending game, right? This is what I don't follow his podcast, but I should. But I follow his YouTube content. Hermosi, I think his podcast is called The Game, because they say business is just like a game. There's no end to it, right? But you definitely have that freedom
Mm-hmm.
and
And I think
flexibility.
most nurses at some point reach a point where they realize I'm doing a lot of work and I'm not being compensated for it or valued for it. And so that could be another sign that you're ready for entrepreneurship. Because at that point, people are either retiring or changing industries or they're just jumping. Nurses come with a lot of credentials and experience because they're jumping and they're looking for something and
Advancement.
they're not sure what it is. So they keep going to different places and settings thinking they're going to find it there when really it's within them.
That's awesome because honestly, sometimes I think we have the potential, the ability to do so much more because we want to create impact. We want to help people. Obviously, we're in the business of like helping people. Sometimes it's not directly, but it could be indirectly. And I think ultimately that's what entrepreneurs do. They solve problems, right? You solve problems for the world, but it's just like a supply and demand. The people that do it better, right, do it faster, and solve the biggest problems are the ones that are paid the most, right? So can you imagine like even just like a quick concept like the value, right? So we talked about we talk about value-based pricing and things like that. Um, but think about it just popped up in my head. Like I used to be an ER nurse, like we saved people's lives, like literally, like what other value
Mm.
better value can you give than to saving someone's life? And then we think about like how it always goes back to money for me, and I'm not like selfish with money, but we don't talk about money enough as nurses. But where's the value-based pricing in that? Like we're putting our lives at risk
Mm.
to save other people. Obviously we saw that in the pandemic and stuff, but it was going on before with TB, HIV, all these things. So it's like I feel that we are worth so much more and that we don't get compensated as we should. So this is why I think a lot of nurses are looking towards entrepreneurship or at least a side hustle to make that income. And it's so liberating, right? To be like, I can generate my own income,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because we have so many skills, like you said. So if you're just joining us, we're talking about entrepreneurship for nurses and signs that you may be an entrepreneur undercover and maybe think about starting your own business. So, number one was if you have that innovative problem solving ability. Number two, if you have a passion for independence and freedom. And number three is business acumen. We got to speed it up a little bit, but what are your thoughts on that part? Because I know in school we don't really cover business skills in that, but what are your
Yeah, so when it comes to business acumen, first of all, I have to say that nursing school is not designed to give us everything or expose us to everything that it means to be a nurse. And we should probably do better about telling people that.
right,
Because if I think I've been exposed to everything that I have, that's going to set up my limited mindset, right? And I'm going to have limited thinking on what I think is possible. And so once you recognize that school is there to play their role, just like your parents are there to play their role, but that doesn't encompass everything that you can or should be exposed to. So when it comes to business acumen, we're just going to do what we do with everything else. And we're going to go out there, we're going to make connections, we're going to network, join communities, ask questions, study, and just continue to learn and start doing it, which is what nurses love, right? They like learning, but they love clinical, right? It's that hands-on, and that's entrepreneurship. You just get out there and start doing it, and you learn as you go. And we can get stuck in analysis paralysis because school teaches us to study first and then work, right? Learn the theory and then apply it. But in entrepreneurship, no, we're just going to learn as we go, and that's part of the mind shift, is that you're going to make mistakes and have to be okay with that. Whereas
right,
as a clinician, we don't get paid to make mistakes, right? Like as you just said, we're talking about real lives. You're not going to get paid if you're failing at that. But in entrepreneurship, that's part of the journey, and that's where all your lessons come in from. Someone
yeah,
I was listening to something yesterday. I think they were talking about Benjamin Franklin. I can't remember, but he failed 1,000 times. But you know how he looked at it? He learned 1,000 ways not to make a light bulb.
right, exactly, yeah. And this is what I think. I don't know if it's like an engineering term or something, but they're like fail fast.
Mm-hmm.
So like you can
Yeah.
continue to learn, so you can get to where you want to be to create whatever it is. So that's great. So business acumen definitely. There are so many resources out there. There's like the Small Business Administration.
Mm-hmm. Free,
There's
free.
YouTube University. You said what?
It's free.
Oh yeah,
SBA, the SBA, yeah.
it's free. It's free 99. And what else do we got? YouTube University. So many people are out there making content. Like people that are actually doing it. Like Alex Hermosi and Layla are two big ones that I follow. Because honestly, like you said, like the $27 and started the cleaning company. You just have to believe in it.
That's the name of his company, Believe 313.
The area code, right? Shout out to Michigan. All right.
Yes, believe. And a lot of time, the whole thing right now is like manifestation. And I asked someone who's a
Yes.
little bit, I know we look beautiful, right? But I'm older than I look. So I hear this whole manifestation thing with the young people, right? And to me, it's just like faith.
Young people, you are young. Stop it.
I was asking someone who's younger than me, what's the difference between manifestation and faith, right? And to me, when they're talking, that's what faith is this belief. You have to have faith. And
Yes.
so I'm hopeful. If there's a 0.0001 chance that it can happen, I'm going to hold on to that 0.001 chance or that mustard seed of faith, right?
Yes.
You have to believe more than anyone else, especially when you're in the entrepreneurial space, because it's the faith of things hoped for, the substance of things yet not seen. And but you have seen it happen, or you have seen it in your dreams, in what God's placed in your heart, whatever you're manifesting, you have to hold on to that. That's your job.
Exactly. And I'm so glad you brought that up because honestly, I've seen shirts like prayer is part of my like business plan and stuff like that. And I truly believe whatever you believe out there, I do believe in God and I do believe in manifesting. Honestly, there's some powerful stuff out there if you watch And even down to like a physiological level, it could affect your body, the way you think, the words that you speak. I just did something recently. You should check it out on it was like a 20-minute or 15-minute, like how to manifest your career goals. Like honestly, write things down. Same thing in business, right? You just have to really believe it. And it sounds kind of woo woo, but honestly, it's just taking action on it, like we talked about. And I think a lot of business owners have been very upfront and transparent and said, listen, when I started, I didn't know what I was doing and I just figured it out. And I think nurses are the best at just figuring things
Figuring it
out
out.
and just making it happen. So
And
that
being
is
honest. I think that's one thing. One thing patients love about us is that they're like, tell me the truth. Like, I know you're gonna tell me the truth, right?
and that's what business is, right? Is relationships with people.
Ooh.
People people I read something somewhere where they talk about in business B2B, like business to
Mhm.
business, and they're like it should really be P2P, like people to
Mm,
people,
mm.
because honestly you're doing business with people. And obviously we're the most trusted profession, and in business there's the term, the know, like, and trust factor. If people don't know you and you're not visible, they're not going to know what type of business you have. And then if they don't like you, like if you're not, and you're not for everybody, that's okay. But your brand, what you stand for, and things like that, they're going to be attracted to that. And the last one is trust. If they don't trust you, they're not going to want to do business with you, right? You're like, this this car salesman's trying to like rip me off. I don't know if I should do business, right? But if you're, like you said, honest and stand firm in your integrity and your values, then people are going to see that. And the referrals, they're just going to keep coming. What's
What
up,
up, Patrice?
Latrice Little? What's going on?
Hey, girl. Hey.
I love it. I love it. And I love LinkedIn because I've met Patrice. We've
Oh,
spoken a couple of times in person. Um, she's doing amazing things. I'm telling you, the world sometimes is a little bit small, but we're out here in these
mhm.
nursing streets.
And you know what? We have to be out here and show up every day for ourselves, right? Which both of us learned from Rachel Rogers, right? Millionaire mindset. You have
Yeah.
to show up every day. When you show up every day, people get to know you. They
Hmm.
get to like you. Whether they like your opinion or not, they like that you're whoever you say you are, right? And then they learn to trust you over the course of time because you said you're going to show up and you did.
Exactly. And it's not easy sometimes, y'all.
It's not. That is not easy, right? But you
But
have
you
to.
gotta keep seeing our faces, okay?
No makeup, no lashes, no pretty lights.
She says, all is well. We're fabulous. I'm fabulous, by the way. I'll speak for myself.
Yeah, thanks for
Thank you
joining.
for joining. And let us know, guys, if you're enjoying this. Put a 1 in the comments. For those that are, not wanting to put any specific comments, at least put a 1 if you like this conversation. And we're going to wrap it up shortly, but we're on number 4. If you have a desire to create impact, entrepreneurship might be for you, because we talked about this feeling of being stuck and not reaching your full potential. So, talk to me about that desire to create impact.
I think when you ask most people who aspire to be in nursing, they're going to say, I want to help people. And that never changes. It's just how we do it, where we do it can evolve as we mature and our knowledge expands. But I think all nurses possess that.
Yeah, because honestly, I think, like I follow Rachel Rogers as well. I'm actually in her like club, which I'm not even really using. It's like 97 a month. I should be getting more into that. But anyways, that is the other piece. Investing in your personal development and
Mm.
investing in your business is huge, because you continue to learn, and you can get to where you want to get faster if you're doing those investments. So like I'm a nurse career coach. I help nurses level up in their career, got to promote myself, and land their dream job in less than 90 days. I know you have the dermatology group that you got on Facebook.
Yeah.
Which,
Yeah. My lane right now is increasing access to dermatology education and training for aspiring and practicing nurse practitioners. So you can find me on the Mahogany Dermatology blog. That's my baby. I also started the DMB Dermatology MPPA group, which is a private page on Facebook for those of us who practice in DC, Maryland, or Virginia. And I have the virtual preceptor shop, which is digital content for that education. I just joined the advisory board Hair for You with Children's National Hospital here in the district, which is part of a handful of programs that were given a grant through the American Nurses Association to establish national standards in hair care. Super honored for that. I'm really humbled for this opportunity. And then I'm the social media manager for diversity and dermatology. But the best way to find me is on the blog, Mahogany Dermatology.
Awesome. And she's doing the podcast, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which is
Yeah, the Melon Initiative. We will hit 1 year anniversary. Next week is Nurses Week. That's when we premiered our show last year. And we're doing the same thing this year. So all next week, we have new episodes every day. And then we'll be picking up a new schedule where we release new shows on Sundays at noon. And we promote, we're trying to help our audience grow with us. So we talk about really basic things, primary cares, high blood pressure. And then we're going to advance topics in detail as our audience grows with us.
awesome. And I'm featured on there. So check that episode out when it drops.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you again. She is doing amazing things, all the things. And thank you for watching, Lionel.
Thank you, Lionel. Thank you so much for your message.
Diverse in context, women who associate faith to business are very few. Give God the glory to God for both of you. Thank you. And Patrice is giving us a 1.
Yeah, see, listen.
Love. Thank you. So let's wrap it up with the last and probably the most important topic. Point to this is if you have a risk-taking mindset, then you should probably be in entrepreneurship, right? Because those who don't risk big or they don't have a growth mindset, like you mentioned, a self-limiting mindset, we have to break away from that to be able to succeed in business. So what are your thoughts on the risk taking?
Yeah, and that can be scary for clinicians, right? Because we're in the practice of not taking a lot of risk. And that's where that community and networking becomes essential because they're going to support you, give you encouragement, give you the tools. And you can just take your time, right? It can be distracting to see people in social media, but you can't compare your 7 days to someone's 7 years.
Exactly. So awesome. So to wrap it up quickly, number 1, we got innovative problem solving. Number 2, a passion for independence and freedom. 3 is business acumen. 4 is the desire to make a greater impact. And then 5 is risk for mindset. So tell the people where they can find you.
Yeah, I show up every day on LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok. But yeah, the Mahogany Dermatology blog, that's the best place to reach me, to be honest. And I go live on YouTube on the weekend under my name, Kimberly Madison, DNP, where I share my NP journey as well as my journey with my own skin. So yeah, that's
awesome.
If you want to be on the show, if you want to be on the Melon Initiative, you can just hit me up either on LinkedIn and any of those platforms that I mentioned. Maybe you'll have my information in the description box. But you can just Google me.
You can put them in the comments.
You can Google me. I'm on Google.
Awesome. Wonderful. So we're going to wrap it up. And I'm going to ask you just a couple last questions. What is your favorite book or movie?
Oh, Key Person of Influence by Daniel Priestley.
Okay, cool.
Audiobooks. I recommend audiobooks for people who are busy.
Okay, cool. And then next one is what is playing right now on your playlist? Like top 2.
Well, this morning, my playlist, they're just books.
Okay.
Yeah, dermatology books.
And music. Nothing music? No sound?
Not enough. Enough. Just on Sunday when church.
Okay, cool. And then bucket list item, like top bucket list item.
Oh gosh, the top one. Oh, so actually, you know what? I want to send someone else's kid to college.
Oh my goodness, that's amazing.
That's what I want to do. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
And actually, so I'm doing so I'm also so you see me, but there's a team of people who support me, right? My parents, my brother, and my love bug. And I'm actually on a mission to retire him, just like Tabitha did her husband, right? Just so he could do whatever it is he wants to do. So I'm working really hard to make that happen.
That is amazing. So again, thank you so much for listening to the Nursing Dose with Farah. Thank you, Dr. Kimberly Madison. Please check out more shows on YouTube for the Nursing Dose and check out Dr. Kimberly Madison and all the things that she is doing. You are amazing. And just remember, go for it, guys. Have that positive growth mindset. All right.